Today we are facing some of the greatest challenges of our lives, from our health to political unrest, the environment, financial uncertainty, and the nation's racial divide. Welcome to Bill Myers Inspires. My idea for this show was to invite guests and get the conversation started, to take a deep dive into the issues that impact our world with an eye to exploring solutions. And we encourage our listeners to look within themselves, to take decisive action, to make a positive difference.
Welcome to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. We have a great show lined up for you today. I am going to give you a little overview, and we'll get this party started. The title of our show today is Stories of Blacks in History. And our guest today is TV director, Mr. Jerald Harkness. So the stories of blacks in America who made significant contributions to its history is largely not included in American history books and educational curriculum. This deliberate racial biasing toward white achievements in America's history has a devastating effect on how whites see blacks, and over time, on how blacks see themselves. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Mr. Jerald Harkness. Studio Auteur is a content creation company specializing in documentaries. CEO Jerald Harkness has over 25 years of documentary production experience and has produced and directed for Paramount TV, UMC, ESPN, VH1, A&E, PBS, and the NCAA. Notable awards include a National Emmy, Best Documentary for the International Academy of Web TV, a Webby nomination, and various festival selections and awards. Recent work includes a documentary short called Wesley for the multiple award-winning Election Effect series for Paramount TV and distributed by Facebook in 2018. In 2018, Studio Auteur produced the docudrama series entitled True First, which celebrates forgotten and overlooked African American trailblazers and pioneers for the Urban Movie Channel. Mr. Harkness has been the producer of a number of independent and broadcast documentaries, including a national Emmy for his work on ESPN's SportsCentury series. His first documentary, Steppin, in 1992, won the National Educational Gold Apple Award, making it eligible for an Academy Award nomination. Steppin also won the 1994 Pan-African People's Choice Award. His second documentary, Facing the Façade, won the Indiana Film Festival's Best Documentary and People's Choice Award. Jerald produced The Game of Change, which was selected for the 2008 Heartland Film Festival. Harkness's national broadcast credits include Game of Change and the Al Unser Story for the Emmy Award-winning SportsCentury series for ESPN Classics, 7 Days Left with Queen Latifah for VH1, and the Andy Gibbs Story for A&E Biography. Other broadcast documentary projects that aired in Indiana are Living as a Legend, The Damon Bailey Story, The Men on Montfort Point, The First Black Marines, and Eyewitness to a Century, the Indianapolis Recorder newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my pleasure and an honor to introduce to you my good friend, Mr. Jerald Harkness. Welcome, Jerald.
Bill, man, thanks for reading the accolades, brother. That was very, very nice of you, man. You took all my talking points, all the stuff I was going to talk about.
Well, you did the work, man. I just had to read. That's all. Reading is fundamental,
There you go.
Yeah, man. Well, I am excited to have you here on Bill Myers Inspires. We've talked about this here show, and it's been,
Right.
long in the making. So I'm happy to share this space with you at this time.
Oh, brother, I'm honored to be here and excited about the dialogue we're about to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Gerald, let's just dive right in. I am curious what your take is on the premise that I set up, which is Black history and how it is largely not covered in the American history narrative that we are taught in school. Why do you suppose that is the case?
You know, why that happens is a very deep and systemic answer, maybe even, definitely above my pay grade. But I was thinking about, Bill, since we've been talking about this topic, because you grew up in Indianapolis too, didn't you? Because I grew up in Indianapolis. Yeah.
Yes,
and so I was thinking about this. I was very, very fortunate to go to a couple of private schools when I grew up. I went to St. Luke Catholic School from first grade to eighth grade, and then I went to Cathedral High School. But I remember, Bill, my parents were always very supportive, encouraging of learning beyond what was taught in the classroom. And they always made sure that I went to events that talked about Black history, saw movies that celebrated Black history. I was a really big comic book fan, but I remember buying a couple of Black history comic book series. I remember having a Frederick Douglass comic book because for some reason, I don't know, I just grew up really fascinated with African American history. And going to St. Luke, it was absolutely predominantly white. It was a great experience. Made some wonderful friends that I still have today. But my school, I was one of two African American kids in my class. And the reason why I bring up St. Luke is that I remember, I was maybe fourth or fifth grade. I went up to my art teacher and said that I had just recently got a gift from my family and I wanted to share it with the class. And it was a collection of paintings on great African American heroes. And I got in front of the class, man, and gave my little presentation and said, here's, Dr. Charles Drew, and here's Martin Luther King, and here's Harriet Tubman. And I literally gave a lecture because I felt it was just so important, and I felt like I want y'all to know these stories because they're important to me. So I think that interest and that intrigue has always been in me. And, you and I had the good fortune of working with you on True First. But as you were reading my credits, I had forgotten the first documentary I produced and directed that dealt with African American history was The Men of Montford Point, which the first Black Marines, which their story has been largely overlooked, and it's an amazing tale of so many heroic African Americans who, faced racism while fighting for their country, which was always such a fascinating dichotomy of thought. So
now, what war was it that they were engaged in?
Yeah, so they were engaged in World War II, and they fought in the Pacific Islands. I remember they talked a lot about Iwo Jima, but I remember one of the sound bites was when they were driving from cross country to get to San Diego for their basic training, and here they are traveling the country, about to fight for their country, and there were restaurants that wouldn't allow them to eat in their diners. One guy said there was a sign, no dogs, no blacks, no Hispanics, no animals allowed. And so just imagine what that does to your psychology, man, when you are asked to put your life on the line for a country that doesn't see you as a full citizen. So I've been very, very fortunate, man. You know how hard it is to get a story off the ground in the world of media, and The Men of Montford Point was the one that gave me the opportunity to kind of go into a more historical documentary, and I'll never forget that experience. It was starred by a mentor of mine named Chris Duffy. I was good friends with his, and so anyway, I had to give Mr. Duffy credit. He passed away many years ago, but he had always wanted to do something on the first Black Marines, and I was very honored to have the opportunity to direct that particular project. Wow,
that's incredible. So is that available anywhere that we could share with the guests?
Here's the heartbreaking truth. So It's not. In addition to it not being available, somehow the master and raw footage got discarded. This was back in the mid-'90s, Bill, so we were still shooting everything on beta. And there was some confusion in the tape room, and so all of the footage got destroyed, which is pretty heartbreaking. But nonetheless, I really learned a lot from that project. It was the fourth documentary that I had done by that point. And it was, it was my first time tackling a historical subject like that, and so it was definitely challenging, and learned a lot. And I think when you know this from all the artistic stuff you do, one project just prepares you for the next project, and so on and so forth. So
right, absolutely. So that's a fascinating story, and it really is tragic that we will not be able to access that. But, these things, they do prepare you for the next one. These things do happen. Those unfortunate happenstances, losing footage and things becoming destroyed. And, it is a part of the game that a lot of people don't realize. So I can affirm, affirm, that when you didn't hit that save button and you go, oh my,
that's right.
And you have to walk away in a circle for about 50 minutes.
Yeah, you do. That one hurt because we had put a ton of hard work into it, and like I said, that was my last analog project, Bill. Everything else I did after that was digital. Avid finally kind of came into play and became part of the mainstream. But live and learn, both creatively and business wise. So
absolutely. Well, I am I'm so excited. There is so much to talk about here, and I'm again grateful to have you on the show today to sort of dive into some of the complexities about getting historic stories of blacks out into the public sphere, And it seems that we've done, a pretty decent job of late with regards to some stories that have been able to penetrate the market and find their way, usually via feature films, believe it or not. I mean, as opposed to documentary. I mean, some what was the story with the astronauts just recently? The females that black women that were so instrumental in what was that?
Oh my gosh, your listeners are going to kill us both for not remembering the title, but there's been the the biopic of Harriet Tubman that just recently came out.
Yes.
A biopic, Thurgood Marshall. Reginald Hudlin directed that one. The Jesse Owens movie, the James Brown movie, the Jackie Robinson movie, which wasn't a complete bio. So you're right. Hollywood is really not about being creative. It's about selling tickets and selling subscriptions and so on and so forth. And so I think I might have the dates wrong, but I think the critical and commercial success of Ray was very, very important to the Hollywood landscape because Jamie Foxx just knocked that out the box, and and because of that success, you start to see that Hollywood, they're not going to probably do more than one. But studios see, okay, there is a marketplace for this. There is a way that we can get a return on the investment, and so features, scripted features, have been doing well in the marketplace. And then with cable, Lifetime is doing a lot of black female biopics.
Right.
Netflix is really up in the game as far as, but in my world, which is primarily documentaries, surprisingly, it has been an uphill battle. I can't really quite figure out why.
Let's hold that thought right there, because I got a feeling we're getting ready to jump into chapter 2 of this conversation. So I just want to give you an opportunity to take a breath and for us to take a break. You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. Stick with us and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. I'm Bill Myers, and my guest today is Jerald Harkness, TV director and producer. So Gerald, we were just talking about the Hollywood sort of commercial buy-in that was perhaps prompted by the great success of Ray. And right. Jamie Foxx's amazing performance, and certainly getting an Oscar doesn't hurt that profile either.
Exactly.
So, but I think as you just mentioned right before then, we said that your specialty, has primarily been in the realm of documentaries, and right. You alluded to my participation in one of these documentary series that you did for Urban Movie Channel called True First. Now, before I let you get into that, I just want to say publicly how proud I am of you and your effort, because that series and that season detailed many, many, many stories, and I was probably only familiar with maybe one out of that entire lot. And even the gentleman that you had asked me to come in and to portray in that series, I had no idea who he was. And so the beautiful thing is I got a chance to learn something along the way, and that's so important. My grandfather said every day that I was with him up until his very last day on this planet, he would always say to me, "Bill, you learn something every day." And so I did learn something, and I have you to thank for that. But now that I've done all that lathering and drum roll for you, I want to now have you tell us about this amazing series called True First. Yeah.
Well, first of all, it did pop to me during the break. Hidden Figures is the movie about the black female president. So terrible of me that I didn't recall that right then. So True First was actually an idea from a good friend of mine that I went to high school with named John Walton. And I won't go into the details, but John had, because I want to get to the point about the network, but John had contacted me and talked to me about he had some ideas that he wanted to try to get into the marketplace, and he had an investor attached. And so John and I met, and he went through about 3 or 4 ideas, but he came up with the idea called True First, which I immediately jumped on. I think John had maybe a different idea for how the narrative was going to go, but once he told me that, I was like, look, brother, I know how to do this, and I know how to put this together. And my business partner at the time fronted some money, and so we produced the pilot on Stagecoach Mary. And so that's always a risk, Bill, because, you know, you're literally putting money into something that you don't know if you're going to get a return. Fortunately, I had a relationship with the lady who was building the library for Urban Movie Channel at the time, Angela Northington. And when I told Angela about it, she's like, okay, that does sound like something that I would want to support. So we were able to come up with an 8-episode deal. And during the production of the deal, Urban Movie Channel actually got sold to AMC Network, so a whole new regime came into play, and that certainly affected the history, or I should say, the future of the series with Urban Movie Channel. All that said, I appreciate you saying that you learned something new, because, you know, we did try to showcase 8 African Americans and tell stories that most people did not know about. And from what I could tell, Bill, I was really, really pleased with the response, because everyone had that same reaction that you did. You know, I would see on Facebook blacks and whites reacting to it. There was a white lady who said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea there was a lady named Shirley Chisholm and she ran for president." Wow. There were people who talked about you saying, "I had no idea there was this guy named Frederick McKinley Jones who had no high school or college education, but he was responsible for multiple patents, including, you know, the first refrigerated truck. I had no idea that it was Moses Fleetwood Walker was a baseball player who segregated the league until Jackie Robinson integrated the league almost 50 years later." P.J. Wilson directed an amazing episode about Disco Mario, the first DJ. He filmed all of his episode in New York. It's an amazing episode. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, considered one of the first rock and rollers, because she really took gospel music and kind of made it into a little bit more of a secular, popular music style. And she influenced everyone from Chuck Berry to Elvis to Jerry Lee Lewis. So sorry to rattle off, you know, some of these episodes, but I get excited about it because it is part of our history. And America has a very complicated but inclusive history. But for whatever reasons, still to this day, unless it's the month of February, we're really not talking about the contributions and achievements of African Americans. So it was an honor to work on True First. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but we did the best we could with the circumstances.
No, it was awesome, and you know, and even when you mentioned, you know, with the exception of Black History Month, unfortunately. You know, it still winds up becoming the cardboard cutouts that were, you know, placed along, you know, on the ceiling or sort of, you know, bordering the room, you know, with the Martin Luther King, the Harriet McLeod Bethune, you know what I mean? That George Washington Carver. It still becomes Frederick Douglass. It becomes that like 10 or so that we just continue to go back and visit. And the disservice is the fact that truly, there are thousands of people in the course of hundreds of years who have made remarkable contributions inventors, scientists. I mean, in every walk, it's not just, basketball players and rappers,
That's exactly right, Bill. That's exactly right.
And that's what's so unfortunate is that it gets boiled down, to this very narrow thing that I think really does have a psychological effect when we look about and look into race relations, because if all the heroes in our history books are white, okay, I just want to go. Then there is naturally a pridefulness in white people that and an equivalency that says, success or heroics becomes synonymous with white.
Being white,
and there's nothing wrong with pride. It's just that there are many things to be proud about, and that's we have been talking about in this series, Gerald. It's been about taking a deep look into racism, and that's why I was so interested in speaking with you, because we can talk about not only the stories of which there are many that people do not know, including African Americans not knowing about their own history. So it's so important to share and use by any means necessary to get these stories out. But I think that the industry, in the midst of our capitalistic society, and we just have to do what sells, this is where a lot of the decisions get made that do not promote the real truth or the historic significance, because, at the end of the day, it's better just to, drop a beat on there and, see some dancing going on. You know what I mean?
Right.
A little rump shaker or something. Really.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people, and Bill, you and I have talked about this endlessly, is that, people really think that Hollywood is this idea-driven industry. And, of course, ideas and content are the lifeblood of the industry, but Hollywood's really more like a bank. And they have to weigh what is a financial risk, or what is the least financial risk that I can take, because a lot of these brothers and sisters who get into positions of making decisions, I have found personally a majority of them become far more conservative, not in an ideological way, but in more of a, I don't really want to take risks because I don't want to mess up what I got. I remember meeting with a brother who worked at a pretty big international distribution studio, and he said to me, he's like, you know what, man, I would love to make a movie like Love Jones every year, but my formula is this: I do comedy specials. I've got the formula down. I film where there's tax incentives. I sell it to Comedy Central. Then I sell it to BET. Then I strip the audio and I sell it on the iTunes. That's all I do. Because he didn't want to take a risk. He didn't want to. He didn't want to say, well, maybe we should do something like A True First, or like, this movie or that movie. And so,
is it because the opportunities are so narrow that are so few that are entrusted to the community of black producers, black directors, filmmakers, so on and so forth, that the opportunities are so sparse that you can't afford to take a risk. You know what I mean? You're just trying to hold on,
You're just trying to hold on, man. And so, you and I have discussed this when I started dealing with a new regime about a second season of True First. They were very, very lukewarm at best to it, because they knew that they had other docudrama series of more racier storylines than Black History that were probably doing numbers that doubled what we were doing. So, from the studio's perspective, they're like, all right, I got this docudrama series about strippers, or I got this documentary series about Black history. and I'm getting these type of numbers for the strippers compared to the type of number for the Black Histories. It's being real.
Yeah, I'm going with the
business.
pole dancers. Yeah.
Right. I gotta go with the pole. And so, it is, that's just the reality of the situation. And Truth First is something that I will say this. Let me back up. I will say that I do think the situation's improving greatly, Bill. I really, really do. I think there are a lot more opportunities for inclusive stories, stories about people of color in Hollywood. I do see a lot more African Americans in positions to make decisions, and it's very, very exciting to see. I don't know if it's a moment or a movement, but a lot of projects that you and I have talked about, seem to be, the industry's listening a lot more. Now, again, they could go back to saying, now we're going back to the poll next year. I don't know. But for now, and the industry's changing because, Netflix is like crack, Amazon's like crack, Hulu's like crack. They got to keep giving you so much new content to keep you coming back that the demand for content, it's never been like this before, man. It's never, ever been like this before.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to talk. We're gonna set ourselves another little breathe time here, and then when we come back, I do want to dive into a little bit more of the situation that we're currently facing societally and its impact on some of the decisions and opportunities that are opening up for Blacks. You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network with my guest, Jerald Harkness. We'll be right back.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation.
Welcome back. We're here with Jerald Harkness, TV director and producer, and friend o' mine.
Yes, sir.
So Jerald, so Black Lives Matter. We've got a pandemic. We've got mayhem in Washington D.C. We've got circumstances, and then we have George Floyd and all that. And so, how has that informed or influenced decisions or opportunities that you see perhaps opening up or closing, depending on how you see it, in the Hollywood establishment?
Right. So I'll answer that in two different ways. And I'm not trying to put a self-plug in, but I have produced
go right ahead.
Well, I produced a documentary called Facing the Façade. It came out in early 1994. It was the first documentary I did with a mutual friend of ours, Brother Bill Mays. And it was about 8 African American students and their experiences going to a predominantly white college, living on a white college campus. And the documentary just did okay. My first documentary, Steppin, did a lot better than it. And then my third documentary was on Damon Bailey, which is the least black story you could ever tell, and that did well commercially. So anyway, fast forward to this summer, someone from IU's Black Film Archives Department, a lady named Terry Francis, said, you know what, given all that's gone on with George Floyd, I'd like to re-release Face in the Façade. So, and then have a panel discussion afterwards. So, Bill, man, I was so blown away. They re-released Face in the Façade, which is a pretty gritty, unapologetically black perspective documentary, and made it available on YouTube. And, brother, I have heard from people I went to grade school with, people I went to college with, people I've worked with, all white, saying, Gerald, I had no idea that your experiences as an African-American were so different from my experience. Never thought about it, never hit me, never thought that you and others had the challenges that you had to face. Blew me away. I mean, I had, people in tears, all this stuff. So I think the reason why I set it up that way, Bill, is because our stories have been neglected. It's kind of bittersweet that something I did 24 years ago still resonates today in the wake of George Floyd's murder. But at the same time, I think mainstream society, African Americans, and Hollywood are waking up to the fact that these stories need to be told. These stories do have a market. They can make money. And these stories in some way can do exactly what your podcast is doing, which is foster insightful, productive, important conversations about race relations. And so that doesn't mean that these stories aren't entertaining.
Right.
With True First, we try to do a mix of both comedy and historic context. We had a number of stand-up comedians who gave context to the stories because that's how we talk. Bill, when you and I are talking, a lot of times you and I are cracking each other up because, sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying. But at any rate, that's a very long-winded, all over the place answer to say that I am encouraged. It's still going to be an extreme challenge to get projects greenlit, no doubt about that. But I've seen in the last 3 or 4 months networks being far more open to having conversations about stories that I've been wanting to do and I've been pitching for about a year and a half. And I've even had clients come to me saying, you know what, I was so moved, or I am so moved about Black Lives Matter that, I'm now thinking about doing this project, or I'm thinking about doing that project. What do you think? So, the hope and the prayer is that these stories do become more mainstream, do become more in demand for the marketplace. And I think we've got a good shot at that happening because of, the demographic shift. What is it, 2040? It's going to be the minority majority. And so Hispanics and blacks and Asians and, they have Netflix subscriptions too. They've got subscriptions to Hulu too. And, and so I do see it's the cliche. We still have a long way to go, which we do. But I can say from a personal standpoint, I have seen an uptick in interest for stories of inclusion. So while that door is slightly cracked, it's up to brothers like us, like you doing with your podcast and me hopefully doing with projects that, we try to help open that door a little bit more because these stories are so important. And they're entertaining, man. There's so much fun to tell.
We just need to be kind to the young people because when that time comes, when it, really turns around and is far more accessible, you and I both are going to need to have some young legs pushing us in our wheelchairs.
It's true.
Into the theater so that we can sit there and high five one another for 90 minutes or so.
Right.
So
right. Exactly right.
I know that was out there.
I loved it.
So here's the deal. What do you think about gentlemen that have been able to cultivate their even studios? I mean, of course, you've got Tyler Perry. You've got, and I'm very curious about the work of Byron Allen. He fascinates me. He fascinates me.
Bill, he's, Tyler Perry, has had such a phenomenal, trailblazing career. On a personal level, I'm not a big fan. Just his work just doesn't speak to me. I'm probably the minority of that, but I certainly got to respect what the brother's done. Hey, man, Byron Allen is the beast. Byron Allen is in the game and is going to shake heads. He's a little bit more of a maverick. He's a little bit more of the outsider who built his own empire his own way, and is now trying to get the industry to recognize him as the mogul he truly is. Where someone like Tyler Perry, no fault of his own, made it within the system, if that makes sense. He got in with the right people and in Lionsgate, the right studios. Oprah loved him and all that stuff. So he was anointed by people. Byron Allen did it his own way, on his own terms, and I know that he's been trying to get. I know he's had some legal battles, which I wish I was a little bit more versed on what he's gone through. But man, that brother's bad, man. Byron Allen.
Yeah, that's the Jeff Bezos class there, boy. I mean, he's the Amazon guy. I mean, you know what I mean? He's that kind of big. I am excited and certainly keeping my eyes wide open to see how that all shakes out for him, because I believe what you're referring to as far as the legal matter is, I believe he's in a court case with Comcast or something like that, a discrimination suit or something. For people sort of keeping black producers and content owners out of the marketplace. Again, we're talking about racism, and it is very, very real. It is. So for instance, one of the points I wanted to shine a light on is the idea that, okay, so even when we can openly admit that history and these historic tales of achievements of African Americans may not be, the top drawers choice as far as studios and whatnot picking it up. The part I want to challenge is to say, but it's a difference you or I walking in with those stories. And oftentimes someone who is white will walk in covering the black story, and it actually moves forward. And so I just want to call that out, because it's real. It's not a bias. I'm not, it's just the way it is. I mean, I'm amazed that it is a Ken Burns who, of course, will lay out jazz and everything else. And I was president of, African American Jazz Caucus, and there's a lot of debate about why that had to go like that. There are plenty of very qualified black filmmakers and people who have strong interest in black stories who are African American, so on and so forth. But they can't get the time of day with these stories. And I am wanting to ask, what is it that suddenly makes it feel differently when someone white decides to, I'm going to tell that black story, and everybody goes, hey, well, I mean, that is... It literally, that is something that infuriates me so much that the high blood pressure definitely goes up, because it's just that I know of personal situations I'll put it like this. I know of situations here in Indianapolis of where a black person pitched a story idea to a network, a white person pitched the same idea. It's a black story,
and the white person got the nod. I'm personally seeing people who are taking work that I've already done and repeating it and maybe updating it and having a budget 3 times the budget that I had. Ken Burns is, he's PBS's go-to guy. He's their Spielberg, and so.
And I want to be clear. I want to be clear, Gerald. Yeah. I'm not taking a shot at Ken Burns. He does fine work, also. Either. You know what I mean?
I'm not either. It's people can't get past the fact that they're just usually gonna work with people that they can relate to, that they feel familiar and comfortable with, which is incredibly frustrating. That's probably the most frustrating thing in this business, man, is when I see, either it happens to me or it happens to friends of mine who are very, very talented, who can't get a shot, but some cat who's mediocre at best can get repetitive shots. And I do want to say this.
Go ahead. I've got some.
Well,
go ahead.
The biggest thing I wanted to say is that I'm not one of those. I remember Spike Lee went off when Spielberg did Color Purple, which I felt was unfair. Any storyteller has a right. She or he has a right to say or tell whatever story they want to do. And there's been some great black movies with black storylines directed by white directors that were fantastic. I remember with True First Bill, I was trying to hire an editor who's white, and he said, well, am I the right person to edit your project because I'm a white guy? And I was like, well, remember you edited Andy Gibb with me? Andy Gibb is white the last time I checked, and I'm a black guy who told the story. So I don't get into that part of the game.
Yeah, no.
I will say this, though. There's sort of like this intangible, indescribable, emotional space that a black director can do a better job with telling a black story usually than a white person. A lot of times when I do see white people direct stories, and a lot of them are good, I'm not saying that they're not, but a lot of them are superficial, they're overly academic, and they're very, very cliche. And so what I try to do is just to be as visceral and as unapologetic about the narrative as possible. Especially in the world of documentary, I've got facts on my side. And so usually I'm like, look, if I stick by the facts, which are usually entertaining in themselves, then I'm going to do pretty good. But I'm not a cut and paste, I'm not just a point and shoot, superficial dude. You got to get into the soul of a project and the soul of a story. So I do think we're better at doing that, but I'm certainly not trying to say that white shouldn't tell black stories and black shouldn't tell white stories. That part I don't agree.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and there's no part of my being that subscribes to that particularly. And
right.
there are certainly look, if you do the work, i.e., if you are the producer or director and you are tasked with a black story, and you are white, if you did the work, I'm talking about the research, the conversations, the entrenchment into really getting your fingers in the dirt, as far as the story and the understanding and the passion of that thing, then by all means, you know what I mean? Right. Let it rip.
Yeah, go for it.
But you're right. A lot of times guys don't go nearly that far and will just sort of slough that off and treat it as if it was the same or equivalent to a white story. And it's like, boy, first of all, there's just numerous undercurrents and dynamics that make it very different right away.
Undercurrents is a great word. I mean, you want to get into the soul of the narrative and undercurrents and the little details and the anecdotal nuances, all those little nuggets that you got to dig for. They don't come natural, but that's sometimes overlooked in those narratives. So anyway, but it's but to your point, I share your frustration with that, It drives me nuts. You and I have had multiple discussions about it. But, you know, at the end of the day, though, you just got to keep plugging for trying to tell the stories that you really want to tell. But at the same time, you also have to recognize that there's a commercial aspect to storytelling. So you have to find that balance of, you know, telling a compelling narrative, but also making sure, you know, cats aren't turning the channel once your project's on, because it's competitive, right, man. You know, there's 10,000 channels out there and 10,000 options people can be watching. So you got to make sure you get people hooked so they watch watch the story you tell.
You know, there's one other little piece I do want to sort of put the light on here, and that is because of there being so few opportunities, oftentimes for black creatives to launch these projects. They don't have the same success failure rate, meaning if you do a bad job, you know, or a marginal job, that might be your last job. What I wanted to say was that is not necessarily the case when you are dealing with someone who's white, because they could have 5 to 10 abject failures, right, and still, you know, searching for a decent project. I didn't say good, I didn't say great, I'm just saying decent. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that there's so much pressure on that one thing. You don't get a chance to sort of phone it in ever, you know, and
never.
If you don't deliver something extraordinary, that might be the first and the last project you ever can put your hands on.
So true, man. Yeah, so true. I'm so glad you said that, because I think this is in the 90s, so it might have been a little bit different then, but I remember I read a statistic, like if you make your first film, you know, scripted or documentary or otherwise, there's a 70% chance you will never make another film again. And so it is hard to maintain. You know, man, when I met you in the 90s, there were, I won't say their names, but there were a lot of white-owned production companies and white producers and directors doing documentaries. I look around outside, I don't see them around anymore. So I say that to say that, you know, I think you and I both were very, very blessed to have it. You know, I think we do know how to tell stories that resonate with the audience, and that's what the staying power is, because, you know, a lot of times you get one shot, man, and if you don't deliver, if you don't make the money back, if it doesn't hold up well creatively or narratively, that might be it, Jack. That might be the last shot you get. So yeah, man. So I like the pressure, though. I love the challenge of knowing that I got to bring it every night. You know, knowing that every project I got to bring my A game, and I've got to take it to another level. So for me, that's good pressure to have. Yeah,
I kind of eat it for breakfast. You know. Right. It's like I wake up, it's not enough pressure, I'm going back to sleep. You know.
Oh, that's funny.
I don't feel nearly threatened enough. I must. Yeah. But yeah, man, it's interesting, and I don't say any of those things from the standpoint of sort of griping or bemoaning it. I'm just trying to call it out for what it is, and for people to understand that from different perspective, the process is just different. Do you understand what I mean? It's just different.
I do.
It's not the same.
It's
different. Not the same. It's not equal. It's not. Let's not kid ourselves. And so, but I think that, you know, I am again, I'm very grateful that we've been able to sort of take a peek into the industry, the entertainment industry, the storytelling industry, the documentary industry, the production industry, the television industry, the media industry, and we've been able to decipher certain common threads which have to do with, you know, the capitalism being the predominant thing. And unfortunately, I'm a believer that also thinks that there are some things that cannot be bought or are beyond, have greater value than money. And unfortunately, that's part of that history. And we just must remain vigilant and diligent at the same time to seek out every last opportunity that we can push into that and get those stories told and share that with the world. Gerald, it has been a pleasure having you here today.
Thanks,
again,
brother. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, True First. It is on the Urban Movie Channel. Folks, you need to do yourself a great favor and subscribe to the Urban Movie Channel and check this out. You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. Bye-bye.
Thank you for spending your afternoon right here with us at Bill Myers Inspires. Remember, we're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Inspired Choices Network. Remember to take time this week to take a breath and look within yourself and figure out how you can make a positive difference in this world. Spread the word, and we'll see you here next Friday.